prayer. And so we have to turn in our backs to you with us facing the Lord. Prayer. All right.
It wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps on the sea and rise upon the storm. Heavenly Father, as we come to you today, as the president of our union is under frontal attack from our government and by extension Patriotic and the OWTU, we ask you, dear God, to bless the gathering here today and to grant the President General and his team the wisdom to make the right decisions for not just the OWTU, but for all of Trinidad and Tobago. Give him the grace and wisdom at this time to fight the good fight with all his might. For Christ is thy strength and Christ thy right. Lay hold on life and it shall be thy joy and crown eternally. I ask you, dear God, to look down upon the health of all our former Petrotrin workers at this time, Lord. Continue to bless them and keep them in your most holiest protection. Look down upon the branch officers of our great union. Dear Lord, continue to bless them with good health and strength. Look down upon the patriotic team and all the members who make up the executive of that team. Dear Lord, bless them with good health and strength. Bless our comrade PG, bless him, continue to grant him long life, health, strength, and happiness. For although the warfare be weary, the triumph is sure, and rest comes at last to those who endure. Thank you for, dear Lord, for the opportunity for this timely response. In your precious name I pray, amen.
Amen. And I want us to remain standing for one moment longer as we observe this morning 1 minute silence in respect of the passing of a number of former Petrotrin workers whose medical plan was taken away from them and who would have died at the hands of this barbaric, uncaring, and vindictive government because of they not having a medical plan that they are entitled to through their terms and conditions. So in respect of the passing of all of those Petrotrin workers who died as a result of their medical plan being taken away, this morning we want to observe 1 minute silence in respect of the person. Hi, thank you very much, members of the media, for coming to cover the OWTU's first response, and there will be many responses coming. This issue, we will not allow it to die, so that Patriotic would have made a number of responses over the weekend. But this morning we find it fit and necessary for the Oilfields Workers Trade Union to bring some more perspective to this particular issue. This unprovoked attack on Patriotic that occurred in our nation's parliament using the cover of parliamentary privilege on last Friday. Now, this government, this PNM government, led by the pack of three howling wolves, Keith Rowley, Stuart Young, Colm Imbert, and the rest, led by this pack of vicious, incompetent people, would not have been able to respond to all of the issues that raised subsequent to the reading of the budget by the Minister of Finance last Monday, I think it was. That everybody, everywhere throughout Trinidad and Tobago, you can find nobody finding resonance with what they say and the reality on the ground. That we are now in a place where if we are not careful, this country may never regain, may never return to a place of decency, integrity, good life, where people are free to walk the streets, where prices are okay, where people have jobs. This country may never return. And it could never return, I want to say, under this PNM government. You cannot expect those who create the problem to be part of the solution to take you out of the problem. They cannot be expected. It's like expecting a black mamba, extending your hand to a black mamba and expecting it not to bite you and inflict lethal poison on you and you die in minutes. It's like wanting to take a ride on alligators through murky swamp and expect the alligator to take you across and not bite you. And certainly it is like expecting you to push your hand in a bag of scorpions and not get bite. In other words, those who create the problem could never be any part of the solution. They do not have a clue as to how to get the country out of the morass that we now find ourselves in. That there are rampant, unlimited home invasions where people cannot be peaceful in the tranquility of their own homes at any hour of the day. There are extortions taking place, yes, in this little Trinidad and Tobago. There are murders by contract taking place. Someone can, in this Trinidad and Tobago, can determine that they want to snuff out your life, pay somebody, that person take the contract, and you are history. That is happening. That the criminals have unlimited access to guns and unlimited guns and ammunition, the most lethal weapons that the police don't have. That they cannot protect our borders from illegal migration of criminals into our borders, drugs and guns into our country. They cannot protect it. That you cannot define in this country now police from thief. Police are involved now, as we see, with using the police vehicle in robberies and kidnapping and so on. So you cannot determine who is police and who is thief in this Trinidad and Tobago. And that our roads are so abysmal that when your vehicles fall into a pothole, you have to find a missing car report for the car. You can't find the car. If you are lucky, just record the fact that you're lucky to have your undercarriage damaged. They are not paying for that. Nobody compensates you for that. That there are thousands of jobless people in this country and more people joining the that the prices are high and rising and you cannot contend school books and so on. That there's rampant corruption in governance in the country. That you have a situation where there's contract out, or their intention is to contract out the whole public service and have everybody on short-term or 1 month contract, and just now it will go to 1 week and 2 weeks contract and so on. And that while this occurs, there's a level of arrogance meted out to the people in this country. And that they say to the country and to the world that it is not their fault and therefore it's not their responsibility. And what they do, they try to spin everything away from them who has the responsibility. But we are very clear in the Office Workers Trade Union, which is why we have both a duty and a responsibility to bring clarity to what occurred. That unprovoked attack on our company, Patriotic Energies and Technologies and Services Limited, and of course, through that, an unprovoked attack on the Oilfields Workers Trade Union. And if we have a third eye, we will see that as an unprovoked attack on every decent thinking citizens in this country. Our attempt, a third attempt at trying to respond to and acquire these assets is not just for the OWTU. We can have rock back and say we just represent workers and to hell with everything else. But that has never been and it will never be OWTU's position. And therefore, in the interest of the people, all of those many thousands, and they are in the hundreds of thousands, who are today without a job, without a bread, without the wherewithal, in a situation where you have all of those things happening, and they are taxing you, taxing you, taxing you. It is as though they swore some allegiance or some pledge to put the country under pressure and put its people under pressure. We don't know who they made a pact with. It is as though they made a pact with some pack of demons somewhere, and the country is suffering as a result of the pact that they would have signed up with somebody. And that is why there's spiritual wickedness in high and low places in this country. And if those who are in governance are ungodly, the net result is what we will be suffering. But we are praying people, and Almighty God will guide us out of all of this moral. And we will do whatever is necessary to come out of that, even if we contribute enormously to seeing the backs of these people when the time comes. So I thought that we put some context to why he did what he did, in our opinion, why he did that last Friday. You would have seen, you would have heard the leader of the opposition responding to the Minister of Finance reading of that budget, some 5 hours of fluff, 4 and a quarter of which has absolutely no substance, disconnected from the reality of the people, the suffering masses in this country, and spending time to justify why it is that they put the people to suffer. And you'd also recall prior to that, the Prime Minister himself telling the country, and anybody who cared to listen to that statement, that it's not until 2027 we have more suffering to undergo, more pain to undergo. It is as though he is not with the reality that we are in pain since 2015 to present. And all of the pain that we suffer, how much more pain and suffering can the people endure in this country under the hands of these ruthless, uncaring, dictative people? And so they came up with a strategy, and I want to first put that strategy out, and you two members of the media, think about it carefully. Why would they choose Tiotiong to come out right after the Honorable Leader of the Opposition would have delivered her response? And this morning I want to tell you, it is because they wanted to shift the focus, grab the headline, remove it away from the reality of her response, which grounded with the suffering of the people, so that as they lead up to election, they don't want the opposition to get any type of credibility for identifying with the suffering of the masses of the people. And therefore, to shift it away from there, what he did is what we responded to: an unpardonable, unforgivable, it's regrettable, because we are going to be dealing with him and that. So as a strategy, look what happened. Our research would have, we went back and we looked at the 2023-2024, that's last year, reading of the budget. And the person who would have came out first to respond was Minister Foster Cummings. We went back further in 2022, and the person who came out first to respond was Marvin Gonzalez. And then we went back in 2021. The person who came out to respond first, the first person who came out was that fella, furthest from the truth, Faris Alwari. He followed the opposition leader. All of them followed the opposition leader, but because they wanted to upstage and to grab a headline and to shift away, and in consort with their particular media friends, project some quote-unquote bombshell. That is why he would have did what he did on Friday. One of the reasons. But I want to start by getting into the meat of my presentation this morning by saying to the media, what is a non-binding bid? A non-binding bid, which is what we were invited to respond to, which we did respond to. And you can Google that anywhere, and you will find out. But I just want to put on records here. A non-binding bill is a proposal made by a buyer that outlines terms under which they would be willing to complete a transaction. It allows for flexibility as the buyer can further negotiate the terms, conduct due diligence, or back out of the deal without penalty. Due diligence generally begin when a non-binding offer has been presented to the seller. So you research it and you'll see what I'm saying. We didn't make that up. That constitutes in its essence a non-binding bid, so that due diligence can follow the submission of that bid. And so we would have done just that. In our expression of interest, everybody knows that we would have won the bid fair and square on the basis of merit the first time around, beating back in the interest of the people, beating back some, 76, 75 other contenders internationally. It's OWTU, your local patriotic technology. And that on the second occasion, we would have gone back again, satisfying all of the requirements, and on the third occasion, we did just that. I want to say emphatically before I go any forward, before I say any other word this morning, is that we deny vehemently that we say categorically that the company, Patriotic Energies Services Limited, did not put before the cabinet-appointed evaluation committee any document that the minister is referring to. We say that categorically. And we challenge him to come out, step out of the cover of parliamentary privilege and tell the public, come outside and tell the public that we put before the cabinet evaluation committee fraudulent documents or so. Come out and say that. So what he is doing, what he did, he reaches into the bundle of documents that we would have submitted before, that the Patriotic would have made numerous statements over the weekend, and I want to, at this point, reiterate the last statement that was made, because every time I was reading it and following it, and every time they had a media release, they came with more timelines and absolute clarity around this issue. And so let me just highlight some of the points that was made by Patriotic. That the statement made by Mr. Young was misleading, mischievous, and acutely calculated to justify Patriotic being denied, selected as the preferred bidder. That by his statement, Patriotic is of the clear perception that there was ministerial overreach and interference in what was supposed to be an independent process. That Patriotic, and this is the one that we want to talk about this morning, after further investigation and due diligence, finding them totally unfit and unsuitable, Patriotic, on its own volition, remove all three initial potential financiers on the 3rd of August, submitted a completely new financial partner. In other words, everybody who went before, we found them to be wanting and lacking in many areas, not being able to finance, not being able to support the documents that they would have given us and so on. Totally unsuitable, and therefore not worthy of going further with. And all of that is consistent with what is a non-binding bid process. So anything that the minister referred to that has to do with prior to the elimination of those three, it is totally irrelevant. But what he did, he tries to skew the information and tell the country that is why we were taken out, or that is why we were denied being a selected bidder. And we are saying that is wrong. That what he is saying is dishonest and it is a lie. And that if that is the case, we demand the scrapping of this process and a redo of the entire. But how did, let's ask ourselves the question, how did Stuart Young get hold of a document that is supposed to be a part of highly confidential? That when you ask them questions about any dealings they have with anybody, they say they sign NDAs and they cannot disclose and that it is confidential. But how did Stuart Young get hold of a document, and perhaps sometimes the question, the answer to the question is in the question itself, eh? So listen carefully to the question. How did Stuart Young got hold of a document that Scotiabank International had the responsibility to ensure that it is insulated from any external interference? How did he get hold of a document purporting it to be in his mailbox, for a document that Scotiabank International, who had the responsibility, Scotiabank International, that had the responsibility to ensure that it is insulated from any, external interference? Because Patriotic, like all of the other contenders, would have signed non-disclosure agreement. So, somehow, using, we believe, his influence, he was able to make a point, to skew, to mislead the country. He was able to get hold of some document he purports to, that we really don't know exactly what he's talking about, but we are sure that whatever he's talking about is not what we submitted to the cabinet. Him as line minister, Minister Stuart Young, as line minister with responsibility for the energy sector, Minister of Energy, with responsibility for TPHL, with responsibility for Paria and for Heritage, responsibility to ensure that a process that is engaged as line minister, he insulated from any type of interference. That's his responsibility. But he, as the minister himself, tells the country that he has a document and he busted mark and a bombshell to get to focus the country's attention away from the realities of the day, the suffering. And even if any document, whether it is document presented to the committee or before, whether it has to do with anybody who we eliminated, any document coming in the minister's mailbox, the minister has a responsibility to not do what he did for political purposes and so on. But that is how they govern. That is how they govern. That is, they govern by obfuscation. They govern by shifting the focus. They govern by PR. And it is as though they want to tell you your belly is full when you're starving for hunger at the hands of what they do. It is as though they want to tell you that there's no crime when people killing each other right in front of you. It is as though they want to tell you that they will tax you and tax you and tax you while you have no jobs and no means to pay and so on. And it is as though they want to tell you, give them another chance to continue to suffer you, the people. That must never happen in never and today. And so this morning we are saying that here's some of the things, and I want to put it back because these things that were supposed to be headline on the morning after the opposition leader's response. And I'm paying particular attention and focus on her response last Friday, particularly in areas where we in the trade union movement would have contributed to. And I say that without fear of condemnation or contradiction. So here's what she had to say about Petrotrade. That there are friends in the media who conspired with him to shift the focus away from that. and I want to quote, the centerpiece of PNM's Rust Belt is the Pointe-à-Pierre Refinery, a major national asset that once provided energy security for this country and the entire CARICOM region. That the refinery is now left to rot and become the world's most expensive scrap iron heap. In his budget speech, I continue to quote, we heard about 3 bidders. None of these companies are known to have any track record in the refining industry. This coming November, I continue to quote, marks 6 years of the closure of the Pointe-à-Pierre Refinery. This is 6 years of depreciation of the refinery's assets. Did the cabinet decision to close the refinery consider the impact of 6 years of depreciation in its economic analysis? 3 attempts to find a buyer for the refinery have failed. From 2006 to 2014, some $1.6 billion was spent on the upgrade known as GOP. This money is now lost. Maybe the approach to restarting the refinery has to change. We on this side commit to restarting the refinery. Upon returning to office, we will appoint a task force of the industry experts to report to the cabinet within 90 days on a roadmap to restart the refinery. End of quote. That is what they don't want you to hear or to focus on. Because Keith Christopher Columbus Rowley, the failed prime minister, would have gone up and down the regions throughout the world and boast how the country is coming out the refining business, as if that is something good. And as they take the country out the refining business, well, hell is poor hell for everybody in this country. No foreign exchange, jobs lost and so on. Terms and conditions, medical plan for retirees and so on. All of those who depended on the refinery for its sustenance, all of that would have fell through because Keith Rowley boasted that whoever done that, who would do something like that? They're coming out the refining business, a business that provides fuel for the nation, and you now have to use scarce foreign exchange to purchase fuel for the nation. Who does that? And we would have said on many occasions how many hundreds of billions of dollars from that time to now would have spent on what? Purchasing fuel to power the nation when we had the ability to do it right here. So they find themselves entrapped by their own maladministration, their own incompetence, and their own arrogance. They are now trapped. And you now have Stuart Young saying, in that same presentation, here's what he's saying, that we may have to what? We may have to get back involved, yeah? And be some kind of minority partner. That is vindication of the oil fields workers straight in there. We are vindicated. So, the scrap iron as they describe it and so on, that we alone know the value of because it goes much deeper than just jobs. He's now saying that we may have to get back involved and that a responsible government can't allow that to continue if they don't get a bidder. A responsible government would not have taken that off the first place. They are anything but responsible and competent and so on. And I often make the point Trinidad and Tobago. And maybe people are too busy trying to respond to their basic needs every day, trying to just eke out a living, trying to make a day work, trying to survive, that they don't realize that there's an indelible connection with failed government policies. There's a connection with corrupt government policies. There's a connection with bad government policies. All of the above contribute to the suffering of the masses. When a government has failed economic and energy policies, it is the people that suffer. Because if you have less revenue, it is the people who suffer as a result of that. And with this government, this fella called Stuart Little, this fella called Keith Rowley, and this fella called the leprechaun, the Minister of Finance, as they get less to collect in taxes, less in revenue because of their failed policies, they take it out on the people. So you have police now are tax collectors, ticket for if you're not lighted, traffic wardens are tax collectors, license officers are tax collectors. All of them have a mandate to bring in the money. Bring the money, no matter how much suffering it is. No matter if the road bad, you bring the money in. Because Imbot need that money. And if Imbot don't get that money, Imbot will make sure that you get pressure. You're not working if you didn't give ordinary, hapless citizens tickets and so on. So they have their ticket books to empty when the day comes. They are tax collectors of the government and so on, indiscriminately giving out tickets in a situation where the road is bad, but the bad road make your vehicle worse, and they expect you to have a vehicle, a good working vehicle in this scenario. And they cannot fix the road fast enough because the refinery that produced the bitumen has been off for 6 years and so on. And they now have to find money for an exchange now to buy bitumen when we was producing it. What kind of nonsense? These are what I want to use them. I'm not going to use it this morning. What kind of government is that? Government by VAPs. And they are anything but caring. But I want to continue to make the point, Trinidad and Tobago. People don't often make that connection. But you know what? You are now forced to make the connection. Because of what? Because of your circumstance. Because of your situation. Because you don't know some people where the next meal is coming from. Some people don't know where the next rent is coming from. Some people don't know where the next installment is coming from. Some people hide from the bank and the bailiffs and so on because they just can't make. Because what? Their jobs were taken away from them. In a boastful situation, this country is coming out the refining business. And after you put the country under all of that suffering, here he comes now and says, after he tries to malign us, he says that any responsible government may have to go back, and they may have to go back, even as a minority partner. So they want to choke while they're not looking, get back into the refining business, something that they should not have done coming out in the first place. Somebody said, when you are angry, when you get so vexed, it impairs your judgment. And because we were pointing out what was wrong at that time with Keith Rowley and his government, very early we saw the signs. Very early we saw the way they were taking this country. Very early we saw what they were doing with the energy sector. And because we were pointing that out in 2017, 2018, that they have failed in the energy sector, failed to deal with crime, failed to deal with the economic situation in the country, they sought to try to destroy the Oilfields Workers Trade Union, get vexed according to Mr. Manning, impairing his judgment and so on, shutting down the Petrotrin, sending workers home, and with that, putting the country under stress, unnecessary stress. But as the response came from the honorable opposition leader, I want to say that we have been having conversations to make sure that there's a guided way forward to restore good governance to this country. So we have been having conversations with the UNC and the opposition leader and their team and so on. But let me just go even further to tell you what they did not want you to hear. And here's a statement, I'm quoting again. After 9 meetings of intense dialogue with the executive leadership of the Joint Trade Union Movement, the Oilfields Workers Trade Union, Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union, National Trade Union Center, and National Union of Government and Federated Workers, NUGFW, we have created the UNC's Workers' Agenda, which aims to restore prosperity to the working class. The important thing there, the important element there is after 9 meetings and intense dialogue with those groups of people. The UNC Workers' Agenda contains critical commitment to the incoming government to holistically enrich, empower, and develop the way of life of our nation's working class citizens. The UNC's workers' agenda is built on some core commitments to our nation's workers and trade unions. And I continue to quote. 1. The UNC rejects the unjust 4% and 5% imposed upon all state sector workers and commits to engage in free and fair collective bargaining through the office of the CPO. 2. The UNC is committed to creating a living wage to ensure that all workers can earn sufficient salaries to support themselves and their families comfortably. 3. The UNC is committed to amending the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority legislation for the PSA's union successorship to ensure representation of the TTRA workers. 4. The UNC will oppose the proliferation of contract work in the public service, statutory bodies, and state enterprises. That is a direct one from our input. The UNC will facilitate the recognition of trade unions that have applied for recognition status at state companies based on tripartite arrangement and expert advice from the International Labour Organization. And I dare say on that one, right now we have a number of, it's not that workers don't want to join, but they are stuck in a process that is geared to facilitate the government and employers. So workers don't get representation because the mechanism to get recognition status, RMU status, is held up in some sort of convoluted, confusing process aimed at supporting the employer and denying those workers representation. And that, along with the others, came out of discussions bringing to the fore the problems that we experience currently that a PNM government will never, ever fix. The UNC commits to a holistic review and modernization of the Industrial Relations Act by the Cabinet Legislation Review Committee. They have for 9 years and counting in their possession a comprehensive packet after discussion to review and make changes to the IRA, and they failed to do that because their focus is not on workers, their focus is not on working people, ordinary people in this country. Their focus is on big business to make the rich richer. The UNC will propose legislation to introduce the criminal offense of corporate manslaughter. So right now corporate manslaughter is what? The building, yeah? The assets. So you can't jail the building, or you can't jail the assets, but if somebody was responsible for the decision to have those 4 divers suffocate, and our position is that they should be making a jail for their incompetence. When the PNM government shield them and make sure and they protect them, and you know what, they are still there to do what? To kill again, to cause snuff out the lives of unsuspecting workers. The UNC will facilitate the discussion of providing a contributory pension plan for daily paid workers. That's something that they don't now have. And the list goes on and on and on. The point I wish to make about all of this is that what they don't want the country to focus on is that what came out of the discussions and what is being committed to that went on the Hansard last Friday by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. I am here this morning not making a case for the UNC, but making a case for what is presented and exposing their attempt to shift the focus away from these things that mean a lot to the citizen and to come up with some sort of underhand plan characteristic of only one set of people: Stuart Young, Keith Rowley, and Imbut. Those type of people to continue to have the people in this country continue to suffer. I just want to ask the question, as they stay quiet in the bosom body of the PNM, inside that unholy camp. They stay quiet while that Johnny come lately, the protege of the Prime Minister. He's like the squirrel that, long time people used to walk about with a squirrel in the pocket jumping out and jumping back in. You remember that? Yeah, with a little chain, a squirrel, and sometimes you see with a monkey in the back jumping out and jumping in. He is that to the Prime Minister. He jumps out of the Prime Minister pocket and jumps back like a little squirrel. The protege of the Prime Minister. I want to ask them, if they are satisfied, all of those stalwarts in the PNN, if they are satisfied for this this incompetent Johnny-come lately, that little squirrel that jumps out the Prime Minister pocket and jump back in, and so on. If they are satisfied for him to lead the party after this PNM lose election, because they're going to lose. They're going to lose election. If this will sit idly by and allow him, this Johnny-come lately that was nowhere before, but who seems to satisfy the bidding of the Prime Minister, if they would allow him. Yeah, yes, that's what puppy of the Prime Minister to lead the party, to be the leader of the opposition. But that's a matter for them. But as we go forward, we reject outright, vehemently, any notion that we would have produced any fraudulent document to the cabinet-appointed evaluation committee. Yeah? And so they now have to back him up. They now have TPHL getting in the dance. But I want to ask a question this morning of the cabinet appointed evaluation committee. Now, those are, we want to tell you who are those people, right? Because that's why the country perhaps don't know. Vishnu Danpal, Sandra Fraser, Dexter Jagannath, Jimmy Wong, Clyde Laborde, Christopher Narayan Thomas, Anil Singh, Shavini Rambarak, Vidya Mohan, Melissa Ingerfield, and Selwyn Lashley. All of you this morning, I want to ask you publicly, did Patriotic produce for you any fraudulent document in our bid to put a proposal for consideration? And I'll answer it because I know you are silent, you wouldn't answer it. I will answer it for you. The answer is an absolutely no. We did not. We did not. And therefore, what we have seen is ministerial interference and ministerial overreach, engaging in a process for which he has the overall responsibility for it to remain ironclad, interfering in the process and so on, and making statements under the cover of the parliament to give the impression that we would have sent to or produced to you, that cabinet appointed evaluation committee, fraudulent document. Any reference to anything prior to at the initial stages is irrelevant and totally should be rejected and discarded. And so this morning we are saying that we call for, we demand on the basis of the injustice that was meted out to the Patriotic and OWTU, and through Patriotic and OWTU, the people of this country. Because if they can do us that, imagine if they are allowed to get away, they will do anybody, anything, at any time. They have damaged the democratic institutions and so on. All of your democratic institutions to protect you from government interference and government excesses. They have interfered with all of those things. And now you have in an independent process, the minister, the line minister, coming to the parliament and making such an atrocious statement. And so you did not hear him say anything about Jindal when we spoke about Jindal. You just Google Jindal and you will see all kinds of things coming up. Jindal that they had in the diplomatic center. So they defend that. They didn't say anything about that. Those selected bidders, you didn't hear them say anything about it. Just Google that and you will begin to find out who are their preferred selective bidders. But you can use your influence as the minister to interfere in an independent process and say to us that it was what? In your mailbox. A lot of nonsense. But I want to say this morning that OWTU has a mailbox. We have a mailbox. And that people don't like, despite the fact that they are sycophants and people will support to their own detriment, what the PNM is doing, what Stuart Young is doing, what Dr. Keith Christopher Columbus Rowley is doing, despite that there are people who support what Imbut is doing, against their own interests. There are honest people in this country who has information and who support what we are doing, because what we are doing is in the interest of truth and justice. And in that regard, since this thing broke on Friday, we have gotten in our mailbox information about who purporting, and I'm saying it very carefully, about who would have trying to induce some people somewhere in the government to get favor, to be chosen as the preferred bidder. And at the appropriate time, because we're doing our due diligence on this. Yeah, we're doing our due diligence on this. And at the appropriate time, we're going to release that, and you will know who wanted to or either paid who influenced, who induced who to be chosen as the preferred bidder. Dear Mr. Roger, a covering letter, and like they don't want, the person don't want you to trace the typewriter or the computer. Yeah? So I guess they probably handwritten, this is handwritten, they probably put on gloves to do that. Yeah. Dear Mr. Roger, I would like to bring to your attention confidential information which is contained in these documents. Yeah? I have not attached my name or contact to any of these documents contained herein due to fear of being victimized and identified and vilified in the public domain. Once again, handle with due care. They even sign it, they look like they rush off as they write this. And we have here a bundle of documents, yeah? We have mailbox too, of documents, yeah? That has to do with allegations of inducements for party financing, for when the time comes, party financing, but inducements to be chosen as a preferred bidder. I want to make it clear, we haven't done our due diligence as yet. So I am not accusing anybody in the government of malfeasance or corruption or accepting a bribe or using money for campaign finance or all of the above. I'm going to qualify that by saying that you don't like to use state funds to run to court and give their lawyer friends briefs and so on. That's not what I'm doing. I'm simply saying that in our mailbox, we found, I don't know, we have a mailbox, and we don't know how, we have to protect this. After this, we might become enemy of the states. You saw that movie? They might swoop down on us, coming from helicopters and so on, and coming from in black suits and so on, trying to come at us to find this document. We have to put this in a safety deposit box somewhere where this cannot be found, lest the state come with what? Warrant and so on to break into our building to get this. So this has to be we have to hold this real close, because in our mailbox, there are things that talks about certain things that are not nice, Trinidad and Tobago. Not nice. So while people will talk about people being corrupt, our mailbox, this is mind-boggling and so on, and we will release it after due diligence at the appropriate time. Yes? All the names, or distribute copies in here, all the names and so on, who collect, who is bagman, and so on, where it gone, where it is for, and so on, who will boost what campaign. I am not now ascribing it to any particular party, I'm saying across the board. Yeah? for political parties across the board. I am not now, I want to categorically say that I am not accusing anybody in the government of being involved in this until we have done our concrete due diligence. So Trinidad and Tobago, that is where we find ourselves right now. And we want to make it absolutely clear that the process is tainted, that the process has been corrupted, that the process, what is supposed to be an independent process, has been interfered with, and therefore we call for yet another time a scrapping of that process and a complete independent, yes, away from even Scotiabank International, because the government has long reaches and so on, and they will stop at nothing to use those long reaches in the interest, not in the interest of working people, not in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago, but in the interest of a few. And that is where we are located this morning, despite what they say. And they will send and pay a lot of people to say a lot of things. But the truth has a lot of enemies because it's the truth. But the truth will always surface and suffice and will always be protected by the ones who stand to buttress the truth, the Almighty God. Truth is the truth. All right. So, we have an activity to perform outside, and so let's just take the questions quickly and we'll go to performing that activity outside.
So, just to better understand, right, the alleged fraudulent documents, based on your understanding, what is it that we're talking about?
We don't know exactly what he's brandishing, but whatever document that he has, if that document is to be true at all, it is not part of what we would have submitted to the cabinet, and we went through the timeline, to the cabinet appointed evaluation committee, the independent, that committee that I listed, and that he would have used his influence to go through all of those discarded bundles, what that we would have discarded, that is not part of it, because we found those people to be wanting, to not come up to scratch, and therefore they're not serious. And therefore, we shifted to an August the 3rd, yes? We would have presented to the to Scotia International, our preferred financer, which preferred financer would have been interviewed, a real person being interviewed by the cabinet appointed evaluation committee on August the 21st, and so on. And that committee has never, on that occasion or after, tell the preferred bidder or us that they have a problem with our
So that document might have been submitted on a previous bidding process?
So that it is possible that whatever he's talking about is a part of the process, that the initial part, and that is why I went through it, what is a non-binding bid process.
Right.
Yeah?
So in a situation where it goes from the ministerial committee to the ministry itself, right? It means that he would have all the new documents that were submitted.
No, if listen carefully, if that was a problem, we ought not to have been going before that cabinet evaluation committee. Yeah? That we would have submitted a pristine new financer, a partner, on the 3rd, which was conveyed to the cabinet appointed evaluation committee, which committee met with who? With the said financer, which is what we was evaluated on. But he wanted to give the impression that whatever he has was the reason why we were taken out, and that is disingenuous, and that is false, furthest from the truth, and that is wicked and vexatious, and we must call it out for what it is. So he feels that he gets all the benefit by skewing this thing away from what the honorable leader of the opposition was saying, and going to now and focusing the country's attention on this. And that exposed now, it exposed the porous nature of the process. Yes? Yeah. I also want to mention too, in our proposal, unlike any other proposal, the government owes the Petroleum Workers Pension Plan, some 4 point plus billions of dollars. Billions of dollars, which now the Petroleum Pension Plan is in jeopardy. And if they do not fund that deficit, which deficit would have been taken up by an ongoing and active company, Petroleum, over time, they would have written down that deficit. But which deficit will only increase as people reach retirement age and begin to withdraw their pension. You have less to go around, and therefore the deficit gets bigger. And therefore, it puts the pension fund in jeopardy. But the Patriotic, in its proposal, would have also submitted a proposal to address that. That is to say, that once Patriotic is operating that refinery, they will take care of that debt. And therefore the government is part of the proposal. And additionally, restore the medical plan and all of those things. Because an operating refinery will need a hospital, emergency centers, and so on. And all of our retirees will be able to get that which was guaranteed in their terms and conditions upon retirement and so on. And so that's part of the proposal. But they wouldn't talk that. So vindictive they are, so wicked and spiteful they are, that they will disregard that and try to make it appear as though we did not meet the qualification. We met the qualification on the first time, we met it on the second time, we met it on the third time, and we got qualification any day. Because we are the ones, the only ones who know how to start, restart, and operate that refinery safe and in the interest of all of the
That Salman Lashley was.
Yeah, he's part of
yeah. And he's also board member of Trinidad, of TPH, right? And you're saying that the committee also have known that that document wasn't submitted, right?
Yeah, but let me just say to you before you go further. I am the President General of the OWTU. You have members of the OWTU who are directors, all of which sign, not me, all of them sign what? Non-disclosure agreements. And in a situation where non-disclosure agreements are signed, people ought to be very, very careful and judicious in how they operate, regardless of what position they're in. Okay?
So, TPHL, which
TPHL is.
Which Mr. Lashley is a director, sent out a media release saying that their receipt of the alleged wire transfer of 1.5 and now they sent it to their legal advisors.
Yeah. Well, we're talking with our legal advisors too as to what happened, what Stuart Young did, and for a recall of this process. So we're talking with legal advisors also. So we expect them to say and do all kinds of things. We don't have an issue with that. But that, again, we want to make the point that categorically, at the stage on August the 3rd and August the 21st, what was to be considered, which was submitted by the Patriotic, was nothing that they are referring to. And if it is, they are saying that that is what caused them to take us out. But then now we have a real problem. Because by his actions, we are seeing where that whole process is tainted, so contaminated.
So, could it be that they were saying that a fraudulent document was found previously that they used it to affect the last one?
I don't know what I said. That is not what he said. Due diligence ought to be done. And those people that we would have met with, if that was the case, we ought not to have been considered in the first place. But to have done that, that is totally erroneous and misleading and gives the impression. You see, what they were doing now, they're scrambling now for responses all over the place because they did not expect us to drop a bombshell, get away from, remove the focus from Kamala and so on, and from what the content of what is said, remove the focus from the pain and suffering, and shift everything, drop a bombshell, and go on the merry way. They did not expect the response because we have the timeline. And we are there. And all the other law-abiding contenders also ought to be very concerned as to how they pitch you out of that process. They wouldn't talk, so we will talk. So we have to start talking.
One last thing. Mr. Yola held meetings with the UNC.
Yeah, what?
Meetings with the UNC.
Yes.
With regards to things pertaining to labor.
Yes.
But between 2010 and 2015, I recall you all had some issues with even amendments to labor legislation that you were unpleased with. You know, say that
That's right.
they didn't fulfill
That's correct.
what they had promised. They took parts of it and choose what they wanted.
Yes.
You all had protest over the
A number of things.
yeah. So, what do you think will be different this time as compared to the previous? I mean, what has the UNC done to restore the OWTU's trust that they will have a better workers agenda?
Right. All right. So let me just say that's a good question, and a lot of people asking that question. But prior to they coming into office, we had a superficial, big something called what the Vice Abad Accord at the top, and it really didn't drill down to deal with the issues. And that what is happening now is that really, and here the statement was made after 9 engagement, 9 intense meetings. So we are now with the drill down, item by item, issue by issue, dealing with explaining and have them understand what exactly is necessary before they get into office. And therefore, whatever mistakes that was made in the past, we use that to inform our going forward, to ensure that those things are implemented. You never guaranteed, but what you want to do is not do the same thing in terms of the approach that was taken in the past. So a completely different approach is being taken now. But here's this. Even as they did not do what they said they were doing, the country was not under so much hell as we are under right now. Just think about it. We did not have all of these murders. People did not fear for their life as much as we fear for our lives now. There were not all of these home invasions and so on. All of those things were not happening. And here's this one. Here's this one. There was not thousands and thousands of people being placed on the breadline. There was not the amount of price increases that we had. There was not the amount of taxes that we had. Yeah. There was no property tax. There was no policemen being converted into tax collectors, no traffic wardens converted into tax collectors, all of those things. We did not have those things happening. And hear what? Hear the big one. Regardless of what they say, we did not have a shutting down of the petroleum company of all of those things, every one of those things are our current reality, the pain and suffering that the people, in other words, when you make the comparison, it's chalk and cheese. And I am sure as we walk the streets, people are telling us all the things that will happen there. But if we could have reversed into time, into time, what was happening there and what happening now is two different things, and so on. And all of those things that are happening now, comrade, I mean, you can't deny it, it's the reality. It's because we have demons in human forms running this country. And anybody that wants to tax people who have the least ability to pay those taxes and threaten to take their property, those people are demons. Anybody who stands idly by and allow thousands and thousands, and in fact add to the thousands who are going home, they are demons. Anybody who attack the working class, they are demons. And finally, let me just say something that I'd like to repeat. You would see in the run-up to the US presidential elections, and even before, that statements coming from the party in government, that is the Democrats, the President of the United States of America, and the Vice President, the candidate for the President in these elections, both of them pledging their unwavering support and commitment forward for the trade unions in the United States of America. And I say that because we like to take our reading, emulate, yes, United States of America. If Yankees sneeze, we catch a cold here. Everything Yankee, and some of them go for one day to come back to talking Yankee. Right here in Trinidad. We are impressed with that. How come you didn't hear some of their armchair commentators, so-called social and political scientists and so on? And there's those people who produce nothing, know nothing, but talk the most on the talk show hosts, those talk show hosts and so on, radio programs. Those hatchet men that are sent by the government to push the government line. How didn't you hear them saying anything about that? Because they said clearly, both the vice president and the president, that the middle class built the United States of America. That the trade unions built the middle class. And that they will protect the trade unions. Yeah. The seat of capitalism, the world's biggest economy. You have the leader of that economy, of that country, saying that, but you know what? Let me just leave you with this. If you had heard both of them saying that the trade unions are responsible for high prices in the United States of America, that the trade unions are responsible for America in problems and all of the problems, that the trade unions are responsible for all of the chaos in America, yeah? You would have heard those armchair commentators and so on, those social scientists and so on, those hatchet men, the talk show hosts who carry the P&M line, you would hear them echoing that. But not one word you hear them say about, make that statement. And in any event, in the United States of America itself, in Europe, United Kingdom, in South America, across the world, wherever there is injustice, people rise up and people stand up in defense of their own interests. And I want to say to the criticizers, and some of them even come from members of the media, those trade unions, the Teamsters, the big unions in the United States of America, one election they support this president because they feel that their interest is being served there, and on another election they support this president. That's to your question there. So they change their support and endorsement on the basis of where they feel the interest of their members and working people and working class lives. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with that. So anybody telling anything to the contrary is a person who has a banana republic type of, colloquial is the word, type of thinking, yeah, minute type of thinking, imprisoned by race and other considerations because they don't want to see the country liberated from the hands of this ruthless, vindictive, slave, evil P&M government. So we want to go and perform that activity quickly.